What up guys, it's Megan, and today I'm going to be talking about my April wrap-up. I read a couple books in April, a lot more than I thought I would read actually. I read a total of 9 books, which is a lot more than I usually read. I usually read like 4 to 5 books a month, so I almost doubled it. I read 4 adult books, 2 juvenile books, 1 nonfiction, and 2 YA. So this is a lot different from what I usually do. I usually read mostly YA with like 1 juvenile and 1 adult book. I read mostly adult and even nonfiction. I never read nonfiction. So pretty big reading month. My page count for this month was 3,935 pages. I read some chunkers, I'll tell you that. I read a lot of big books this month. To go ahead and get started with my first read of April, I read Super Adjacent by Cestari. I'm not going to go too much into this book because I have a whole Random Book Wednesday episode on it. My brief thoughts, it is a 4 out of 5 stars for me. It's super fun, super cute, not a lot going plot-wise, but it's a character-driven story, and it gave me a fun story to follow, and that's what I appreciate from it. The next book I read in April was Poisoned by Benedict. This is the nonfiction book I read, and I'm not gonna lie, I read it for class, but I enjoyed it so much that I had to just tell you about it. This story I gave 4 out of 5 stars, and it is all about the Jack-in-the-Box E. coli outbreak that happened years ago. This story is written from interviews that the author had. So he is taking all these interviews he's had with the people that were actually affected, and then he's writing the story as if it were happening right away, like he's retelling the story. And it is fantastic. It is heartbreaking. It is informational. It is informative. It really makes you see how far we've come in both like health and science and just even like advertising and things like that. I highly recommend this story if you're interested at all in a captivating nonfiction. I think this is a great one. If you think about food safety a lot or like just going out to eat in general, this is a great story for you to pick up, so I highly recommend it. The next book I read is House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. I have a vlog of me reading this, and I didn't really go into my thoughts about it because it took me a while to come up with what I thought. This is a 4 out of 5 stars for me. A brief synopsis. This is about a half-fae female who is a party girl, and suddenly one day she has to team up with an enslaved police-type angel to solve a bunch of murders that are going around town, including her best friend. I said it in my blog, but this book is very addictive. I loved the characters in this story. I personally liked them more than the Throne of Glass characters. I haven't read A Court of Thorns and Roses, so I don't know anything about them. Sorry if you hear some noise, it's my neighbor turning their water on. And I think that just the murder mystery plot was, I didn't expect it, and it was just pretty like new, I felt, for Sarah J. Maas. The problems I had with it, it was a little too long. The pacing was off. There were moments where there was so much happening in short amounts of time, but then there were also like pages and pages and pages of just boring stuff. So it is an 800-page book and that is my problem with it. The next book I read was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, the illustrated edition. This was, of course, 5 out of 5 stars, amazing. Everyone knows what Harry Potter's about, so I'm not gonna just say the synopsis. I will say the illustrated edition is probably not my favorite. The illustrations just take me out. I'll be reading the story and then I'll see the picture and I'm lost from the story. So I think I'll keep my editions. Obviously they're beautiful and I'll just look at the pictures, but if I ever reread Harry Potter, I'm probably going to just read it from the regular paperbacks. The next book I read this month was Pretty Girls by Karin Slaughter. This was 3 out of 5 stars for me. I listened to it on audio, but honestly, I don't think if I read it physically, it would be much better. This is about 2 sisters Claire and Lydia coming together after years of fighting to solve a mystery involving Claire's now dead husband. If you know Karin Slaughter, you know that her stories tend to get graphic and gory, and so I put a strong trigger warning on this for very graphic sexual violence and just violence in general. If you are faint of heart, don't read it. I do appreciate that it wasn't afraid to go there. Karin really took it that extra step to make it scary, but I do think also that this book was suffering from almost too much detail, and I don't think she gave us enough time to make our own guesses about what was happening. Anytime we were posed with the question of like, who is doing this? It's like the next chapter she answered that question. I would have liked to have a little bit more space to think, to wonder, but I didn't get that in this book, and that's why it was a 3 instead of like a 4 or 5. The next book I read this month was Everblaze by Shannon Messenger. This is the 3rd book in the Keeper of the Lost Cities series, so I won't tell you the synopsis of this book, but for the series, it's basically about a young girl named Sophie who learns one day that she is an elf. And so she gets taken to the elf world, where she goes to a new elf school to learn about some of the powers that she has, but there's also just an overarching mystery about where Sophie came from, because there has never ever been an elf in the human world until her. And so that is what the story is about. It's about solving that. It's about her learning. It's a really fun series, and this book in particular, in the 3rd book, we just learned so much more about the world, about all these different characters. We start to solve the mystery a little bit more than we had in the first 2. And while those are so fun, my problem with this book is it moved too quickly. There were no breaks, whereas, say like for House of Earth and Blood, there were too many breaks. They were too long of breaks between the action, and in this one, there was just not enough action. That could be because this is a middle grade story. Obviously, like, younger kids will need that constant motivation to keep reading, but I personally just wished that we got to see more moments of Sophie being at home or Sophie being at school. Instead, she was always running off somewhere to solve some mystery, to ask some questions. 3 out of 5 stars for that one, and I will maybe be moving on to the next one pretty quickly. The next book I read this month was Desperate Measures by Katee Roberts. This is an adult smutty romance book, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I usually don't rate the smut I read just because I find them to be shorter stories, and I don't necessarily enjoy them for the story aspect. I'm more just enjoy them for entertainment and just a good old read. But this book I did rate. I rated 4 out of 5 stars because it was so good. Not just like the smutty scenes. Let me tell you what it's about first. So Desperate Measures, it's actually a part of a like collection of like a series of books. I don't want to say that you have to read one to read the next. So I guess they're all companion novels, but it is about taking like Disney villains and Disney heroes and then putting them in a relationship together. And so in Desperate Measures, we followed Jafar and Jasmine. And in this story, Jasmine is being kept prisoner by her dad, who is trying to sell her to the highest bidder. And Jafar, his right-hand man, decides he's going to save Jasmine and keep her for himself. Katee Roberts has done just such a good job taking this story from a fantasy setting to a real life, almost like mob style crime lord type of city. And it's really interesting in the way it ties in to everything, and the way that you still get like some references of what the characters were like in Disney. I really appreciated the whole storyline. I thought it was fun. This book, it does deal with consensual non-consent. So if you're not into that, don't read it. I personally don't mind. And there is like talk of safe words and how to have a good smutty time safely and consensually, which I really, really did appreciate. And I'm excited to read the next companions in this collection of stories. So the next 2 books I'm not going to talk about very long because I have another vlog, and I actually do go into my thoughts of those stories. That is The June Boys by Court Stevens and You Are Not Alone by Greer, Hendricks, and Sarah Pekkenan. This one was a 3.5 out of 5 stars, and this one was 3 stars, and that's really all I'm gonna say. I'm gonna plug my little video up above my head, and you can go watch it if you want to see what I had to think about them. So that is my April wrap up. I know I went through it really quickly, but that's because I actually want to do my TBR in this video as well. So if you want to know what I'll be reading in May, I'm going to tell you all that I want to at least attempt to read this month. Before I go any farther into my TBR, I just want to ask that if you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe. It'll let me know how I'm doing, and let's get on to the rest of my TBR. The first books I want to tell you are a few arcs that I'm going to try and get through right away this May. The first one is The Witches of Willow Cove by Josh Roberts. It is a middle grade story about a teenage witch named Abby. And Abby has realized that she is not the only young witch in her town. And so her and the other witches start to learn from their teacher, Miss Winters. And as they go through this training, they realize Miss Winters may not be a good witch and they might need to do something about it. That's pretty much all I know, and I'm really excited to give this a try. As you can tell, I love middle grade stories about magic, about kids with magic. I think ever since Harry Potter, I'm just obsessed with the whole training, learning arc. It will come out, I believe, May 28th if it's not pushed back. If it is, I will look that up and it'll be left down below. The next arc that I want to get through in May is More Than Just a Pretty Face by Syed Masood. I think that's how you pronounce it. If I'm wrong, I'm so sorry. This is about a young man named Daniel. He is a gorgeous guy and that's what people see him for, and he's tired of it. He is also funny, he's also smart, and he also wants to be a chef, and he thinks he's a pretty good one already. This is his story of trying to prove that, and he gets put into an academic Renaissance-like competition where he teams up with his friend Bisma to help prove to his father, his friends, and maybe his arranged to-be wife, Cabal, that he's more than just a pretty face and that he has so much to offer. I think this story is going to be so fun. I think it's going to be very powerful. I really have never read a story like this from a guy's point of view. Usually it is from a girl's point of view, so I'm so excited we get to see this. And I think it's going to have a bit of like friends to lovers or enemies to lovers team up type thing. And I'm just excited. I'm so excited to read it. The next book I want to talk about, I will just talk briefly about. I want to read The Hunger Games. I want to do, just a spoiler for my channel, I guess, I would love to do a little weekend readathon for these books. As you probably know, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne is coming out this May, and I told myself that I wasn't going to buy it and I was going to try and get it from my library, but I think I'm gonna buy it. I think I'm gonna buy it. I think I'm gonna read it. And I don't know how I'm gonna feel about it. You probably know what the Hunger Games are about, so I'm not gonna bore you with the synopsis. This will be, I think, my third or fourth reread of these, so I just love them, and I'm excited to be back in the world, and I'm worried for The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I don't want to read about Prison Snow, to be honest, but I'm gonna keep an open mind and I'm gonna give Suzanne all my hope, all my love. Hopefully I will get through these before that comes out so I can read it right away and just be fully immersed in Panem. The next book that I want to read in May is Sparrow by Mary Cecilia Jackson. This is about a young ballerina who excels at keeping secrets. And she does it with no problem, lives her life just fine with all of them, until one of her secrets is about her sexual assault. This secret starts to eat at her and hurt her, and she soon realizes that she either has to face the secret or she has to lose part of herself. I think it's going to be a very powerful story. I love Speak by Laurie Halls Anderson, and I think this is going to be very reminiscent of it. Of art in that book, I think this is going to be just as beautiful and artistic and just a strong story that I'm excited to read, and I think the cover is really pretty. I know it shouldn't matter, but I always mention it because I'm a cover snob. I love them. I just love them. The next book I want to read for my May TBR is Everybody Sees the Ants by A.S. King. I have never read an A.S. King book before, and I know some people are gonna gasp at that. I am picking up because I just was going through my library and I saw it and I was like, I've heard such great things, so I want to read it. If you don't know what this book is about, it is about a young man named Lucky who is going through like a rough time in high school. He's facing bullies and dysfunctional family problems. He starts dreaming of being with his grandfather when his grandfather was in the Vietnam War. Again, I think this is just going to be a very powerful story. I loved the book The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien, which is all about the Vietnam War, and it's very different from this, but it does make me interested about that aspect of this story. I'm excited to see A.S. King's writing style. I've heard her stories are kind of weird, kind of magical, and so many people rave about it that I just gotta figure out what they're talking about. The next and biggest book on my TBR for May is Neverseen by Shannon Messenger, which is the 4th book in the Keeper of the Lost Cities. So, like I said, I already told you the synopsis for this whole series, but I'm going to tell you why I'm excited for this book. In this book, I really think that we're going to start seeing even more of the world, and I'm hoping that this is really going to buckle down on the mystery, and we're really going to start piecing things together that we've been hinting at for the past 3 books. I'm excited to follow Sophie as she's growing, and I know in this book we're going to see more and more side characters, which I really love. The side characters in the story are so phenomenal, and they're just as developed and they go through just as much growth as our main character Sophie. So that's gonna be May, and I really hope I read them all, and hopefully you'll see me reading them and enjoying them. I have high hopes for this month that I'll find some new favorites, and hopefully I won't be let down by any sequels. Looking at the Hunger Games. But yeah, that is going to be my wrap up and my TBR. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and just stay tuned for my next video. That's all I really have to talk about. I don't think I have anything else to say. So I'm gonna go now. Bye.